Good afternoon. My name is Mason Kaiser, or Cadet Kaiser, and today I'm sitting with First Lieutenant Billy Joe Shotwell, a Vietnam vet from, what was it, 1972?
1971, 1972. A 12-month tour, common. Yeah.
He was a ROTC Sam Houston State graduate in
69.
1968, 69, thank you. And today I am going to be asking him some questions for the ROTC newsletter and for Dr. Dunham's Vietnam class. Is there anything you would like to mention ahead of time?
Just that I'm local, born and raised here in Huntsville, Texas, and that is the reason ended up at Sam Houston, because I had an offer from a local businessman to go to Texas A&M University, and he would pay my tuition, but I didn't have a job there, and I couldn't pay for anything. So that's why I ended up at Sam Houston.
That's why I joined the Army.
That's what I'm talking about.
College is expensive.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
Alrighty.
And again, I went to the university. I pursued a university for an ROTC program.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I intended to do, and I did.
Did you get your degree in
Business administration?
Wow. Nowadays, 90% of the campus is criminal justice. So
That's a huge mistake. I worked 30 years at the state prison.
mm-hmm.
A degree in criminal justice in this prison system is a huge mistake.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's not. Are you doing that?
No, my friend is.
Great.
He's
Okay.
over in the prison right now.
I'm just saying, because they're going to. There are not many paying jobs worthy of a degree in the state prison system, and besides that, then you're facing a fully entrenched old boy system.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough. It's okay. You'll probably make it, but I sure would have done something else. But I learned it the hard way. I worked there for 30 years.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, let's start going over
Okay.
these questions.
All right.
I've created up to 23 questions that we're going to just have a conversation about
All right.
and just learn more about your experience in the as a ROTC cadet
Mm-hmm.
and as a first lieutenant in the Vietnam War.
Okay.
For the first question, can you start by telling me about your decision to join the ROTC program at Sam Houston State and what motivated you to join the military?
Okay. My dad was drafted in World War II, U.S. Army, and was sent to the Pacific. Following, of course, the Marine Corps fought that Pacific War. And I just found out recently he also was part of the occupation force when Japan surrendered. He was sent to Japan. And he never told me that, and I wish I had known. But all I ever wanted to do from childhood was be in the military, and my decision was to pursue it through the ROTC program up here at Sam Houston, and I selected branch infantry because I thought that would be the toughest job in the U.S. Army, and it was at that time, because you're dealing with humans and human frailty and all the problems that humans come up with. And how do you motivate a guy to stand up against a machine gun? That's it.
That's,
So-
I think that's something we all have to learn eventually.
Yeah. So you got to understand how primitive life was back when I was 18 years old. So I showed up at the university not knowing anything, because my parents didn't know anything. They were raised in the late 20s, 30s during the Great Depression. They didn't have anything. They didn't know anything. Dad went to school through the 7th grade, I think. So I showed up at Sam Houston not knowing anything about picking a major and a minor and da-da-da-da-da. So I went straight to the ROTC table. First thing I did was sign up for the ROTC program. And Sergeant First Class Charles Davis helped me through the registration, and past that point, I was on my way to what I thought was going to be a career in the military.
Well, what was your initial impressions of the program?
The ROTC program was the only program with true professionals. That is the ROTC cadre.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't learn from a book. They didn't write the book. They didn't lecture the book. So even though the curriculum forced them to teach certain things which we needed to know, they in reality were teaching from their experience. So if something was said in one of the classes about radio procedures, if I didn't understand that, I'd go to Sergeant Davis after the class and look, I just don't, this is not registering with me.
Mm-hmm.
So we had an excellent cadre, and while I was there, Sergeant First Class Alvin Moody Fowler, Green Beret, shows up in jump boots and a Green Beret, and he was the advisor for the ROTC. The Counter Guerrilla Company, and Major Mad Jack Williamson was also advisor for the Counter Guerrilla Company.
Well, that moves into the next question.
Okay.
Was there any training or coursework that you underwent in the program that was more memorable?
Since I knew and was hoping that I was going to be an infantry officer, small unit tactics was most important to me. And then, of course, that includes things like calling for adjusting artillery, radio procedures, formations, squad formations, platoon formations. And remember, we were walking through the woods at that time. This is all go back to World War II. And then in the Counter Guerrilla Company, that's where we really started to see how this leadership thing worked or didn't work. So inspiring people and leading people and encouraging people and developing people. Okay.
Fascinating.
Okay.
I see this.
Yeah, you bet.
Well, do you believe that ROTC prepared you for the military service in Vietnam? Was there any skills or lessons that you took from the program for your time in Vietnam?
The most important thing that I got from Sam Houston was a Counter Guerrilla Company. And the reason I say that, and I was accepted to flight school months before I graduated. So in my orders that I received through the mail, I opened them up, and line 1 says assigned to Republic Vietnam, infantry basic and flight school en route. So I knew that's where I was going to go. So what we learned, what we were exposed to in the classroom, we really learned in the Counter Guerrilla weekly meetings and that weekend in the National Forest practicing small unit tactics. And so any course material that was going to interest me was practiced at the Counter Guerrilla Company and preached to us, and we practiced till we got it down. I would say, again, lectures is the slowest possible way to learn anything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Well, transitioning from the ROTC program to active duty can be a significant step. How did you mentally and emotionally prepare yourself for these challenges when you knew you were going to Vietnam?
I knew I had a year. I was going to be in flight school for 9 months, in infantry officer basic and other things for 3 months. So I knew Vietnam was a year away. Infantry officer basic was a walk in the park compared to what we'd been through up here at the university. So flight school was 9 months. It was condensed, and because helicopter pilots were being lost in Vietnam so quickly, I had 9 months of the most intense classroom and flying that I've ever experienced. It was harder than 4 years at the university. I had a lot of my instructors in flight school were pilots returning from Vietnam, but still nobody said anything to me that, hey, by the way, they're gonna try to kill you over there. Okay. That didn't hit me until I had a 30-day leave after flight school, and about 2 weeks into that, it started to hit me. This is really where
this is happening.
This is happening. This is where I'm heading. So I actually left a week early because the stress was just too much. I got on an airplane and just left a week before I was supposed to be in California for flight. So the ROTC committee, all the university, it was all classroom. It wasn't reality for us until I was almost set to go to Vietnam.
Are there any stories from your time in the ROTC that you remember or stands out?
I think one of the best decisions I ever made in the counter guerrilla company. Well, I do. Let me go back. When I started university, ROTC was mandatory for males. So there would be out on the parade field at Pritchett Field. That field's full. There was 500-600 guys out there, and at some point the counter guerrilla company had gained permission to drill separately from the rest of this big conglomerate of cadets that didn't want to be out there to start with. So and soon I was a sergeant, and then soon I was having to move a company off the parade field out on the street and march back to the arms facility, turn in weapons, form them up, march them back. And then that is not an easy thing to do.
No, sir.
It's not. And the smartest thing I ever did, we had enough counter guerrillas to form 2 small platoons. Well, we went out to the National Forest to do our little programs on the weekend, and we would plan, so this platoon is going this way and this one's going this way. They'll bump into each other and something's going to happen. Well, it never happened. They never ran into each other. So I said, let me be the platoon leader of the aggressor platoon, and we will write a program where we know if this platoon is coming down here, I'm going to ambush them right here. So we get practice in ambushing. They get practice in getting ambushed. And raids, we raided them at night. We're in there in the night defensive position and stupidly built a fire. And we just crawl right in through their perimeter, go in there and just, raise hell with them. So I think that aggressor platoon was a really smart idea. And we drilled with old M1 Garand rifles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
those are ancient.
From World War II. And I think just learning how to follow instructions for a close order drill on a parade field. And I ended up as a guidon bearer before I got in the counter guerrilla, before we started. So all of that was brand new experience, and it's tough to do, tough to learn. But it sounds simple, just move a company around, but it's not. It's difficult to do.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Would you say that the program helped you with your leadership experience, or it taught you in a way that to prepare yourself to be a leader?
Yes. And on active duty, but more specifically for the rest of my life. So the the complex part of this answer is the military in Vietnam had, and this is 1971 and 72. The military had just degraded itself. The war was almost over. Nobody wanted to be the last one to die in Vietnam. Company commanders were not going to get a Silver Star, so they didn't really care. In the aviation company, you're not going to get a Distinguished Flying Cross, so why, my leadership in an aviation company is almost non-existent. It was in Vietnam because the platoon leaders did not fly combat missions, so we despised them. Company commander never flew a combat mission. We despised them as XO. So the pilots in Vietnam had a crew, and not the same crew. There's a crew chief and a gunner in the back, and a new pilot over here in the right seat. But still, you had to get along and develop those crew members to become a crew in order to function. Okay, so the rest of the story is, for the rest of my life, I relied on training that I got through the ROTC committee. They taught me, one, how to make a decision, and it is incredibly stupid that people can't make a decision. But decision making is a huge deal, and it's very, very important. And then, because when I left the prison system, I had 50-something people working for me, and the entire procurement program for the entire prison system, huge project to convert it to an automated system, to people who had never even seen a computer, and tie that into the accounts payable section, and then set up contracts with all these free world vendors to keep this prison running. And all I did was set it up, 50-something people, like 3 platoons. I had 3 platoon leaders. I said, these are your problems. If you have a problem, fix it. If you can't, come to me. I'm going to set up systems and programs. And that's what I was a genius at. And writing procedure manuals. So I did all the rest of my career, all of my life, plan, rehearse, plan, and rehearse. And always remember that if there's a bad guy on the other side that's doing the same thing, to come get you. So have 2 or 3 plans in mind. If your plan is not working, have the courage to say that it's not working, change it, and make it work. So I used forever, and I still do. When I'm up here working, or if I'm at home working, plan your work and work your plan.
That's some great advice.
Okay.
Looking back in ROTC, do you believe your fellow cadets were ready, or if the ones that did go to Vietnam, do you believe that they succeeded?
The answer to the question is yes. And you know already that you'll never be around another group more motivated than this ROTC group. In fact, the one you're in too. So I ended up in an aviation company. Most of my other fellow cadets / lieutenants ended up in some combat arm or somewhere. But so when they get to Vietnam, the war's ending. The war's over. And they're getting thrown in with these people that commanders, don't want to be there, don't see any point in being there, So they really didn't get, other than other aviators, didn't get to experience the true war. The kind of war that grinds you down mentally and physically. But especially the counter-guerrilla people, all the counter-guerrilla cadets were more than ready to face what was coming in the Vietnam War. Yes.
Well, is there any advice you would like to provide the next generation of lieutenants?
Say that again.
The upcoming branch offices are going to be on October 10th.
Yeah.
Is there any advice for the upcoming second lieutenants coming into the Army, but you would like to pass on to them?
Yes. There is being a commander is incredibly difficult to do unless you remember that your job as a commander is to lead and inspire and develop your subordinates. The death trap for a brand new lieutenant is to roll into a unit that's established and think that he's going to change things and make things different, that he knows everything there is to know. That is going to be the worst mistake they'll ever make. The right thing to do is go in with an open mind and a closed mouth and learn things and learn from your non-commissioned officers. They're generally career soldiers. They've been in the military. They know how the military works, and they will help you through the hard spots if you let them and inspire them to do that.
I'll take that. I'll take those words to heart.
Okay.
Well, let's move on to the Vietnam War.
Okay.
What were your first impressions or feelings when you first arrived in the country?
The first thing, and every Vietnam vet should tell you the same thing, it's a 22-hour ride on a plane to get to Vietnam. There's 1 or 2 stops along the way, and you can get out of the airplane straight your leg. But anyway, they feed you every 8 hours. If it's 2 o'clock in the morning and it's time for lunch, they're going to feed you lunch. And you're air conditioned. When I hit Vietnam,
I can pause this if you need to take that.
No. When my plane left San Francisco, it was 6 o'clock in the morning. So you're flying west, you're chasing the sun. So I ended up 24 hours later in Vietnam, 6 o'clock in the morning, and it was already 98 degrees. So when they open that door, and I'm up at the front of the airplane because everything's in alphabetical order, and the heat and humidity just whacks you down. You almost you're instantly soaked in sweat, and your khaki uniform is done, and the smell is awful, and it all works the same for everybody. Go through a replacement company, and I sat with some old time pilots going back for their second or third tour when we was on that airplane, and they said, "New guy, they're going to give you a chance to pick what part of the country you want to go to. Do not go to the DMZ. That's where the war is going on right now." So I said, "Okay, fine." So I went through this replacement, hundreds of us, and my selections was Central Highlands, Delta, So 2 o'clock in the morning, Lieutenant Shotwell, you're on the upcountry shipping roster. You're going to the DMZ.
Oh.
So I said, okay.
Shit out of luck.
So here goes then. So the in-country training was just like ROTC, maybe summer camp, and it was sitting in bleachers, and I was the only first lieutenant infantry in there, and there was 25 guys from who knows from where, and so I get to demonstrate every weapon that the instructor can hold up. He's going to call me out to do that, so I thought that was pretty cool. And got down to my company, my aviation company, and I'd been in flight school for 9 months, but it'd been a month since I've flown. So, and you're in a country, you don't know where you are, you don't know where anybody is, you don't know anybody there, and somebody's telling you where to go, and you just say, "Yes, I'll go do that." Just go, "Okay, so go out here and stand on this this landing pad right here, and the Huey will come pick you up and take you to your company. Well, so I'm standing there, here comes the Huey in, and the crew chief comes out, Lieutenant Shaw, well, yes, well, get in. God damn it, get in, we got to go. And the Huey's got to come off this pad and get over a power line to get out, and my brain is telling me, we're not even going to make that. I'm going to die right here before I get it. But when I got to my aviation company, there was nothing could have prepared me for what was happening there. An aviation company in Vietnam is first platoon, second platoon. There's 20 pilots in each platoon, and a captain, a platoon leader. Well, the way aviation is set up, once I get through my in-country training and my unit and I go down to operations. Operations officer tells me, you launch at 6:30 in the morning. This is at night. You launch at 6:30 tomorrow morning, and you're flying with Lieutenant Deeg, Warrant Officer Deeg, and you got resupply missions. So I go down there, meet Tommy Deeg, and we get a piece of paper. It's got 11 lines on it. That's an hour for each unit we're going to resupply. We can fly an hour for this company, an hour, an hour, an hour. That's 11 hours of flying. And we take off and we go. So it doesn't matter what problem pops up out there, there's nobody but us to fix it. And us being the pilots and the crew. That deals with weather, people shooting at you, maintenance issues, the resupply officer, who generally is a first lieutenant infantry who screwed up and couldn't do anything else. They made him a supply officer. He's not any better at that than he was being a company or a platoon XO, company XO. So he's not ready for me. So now, well, we go to the next one and come back to him, but he's got hot chow going out, and all day long it's like that, all day long. And then down here we're going to resupply, and they're taking mortar fire at this time. Then they got wounded to go out. It was like that every single day for 10, 11 hours a day. So I was not exposed to an organized U.S. Army in Vietnam because it wasn't there. There was no organization in the U.S. Army. Nobody wanted to die there. Nobody wanted to take a chance. But there's still infantry grunts out there, and I'm taking care of them, and that's what I did. So infantry officers, any other officers, anybody in Vietnam in 1971 faced U.S. Army that had no discipline. Drug problems were beyond belief. Racial issues beyond belief. Between blacks, Mexicans, Caucasians, everything settled with a gun. Drug problems was huge. So the military in Vietnam was a disaster. It was in the later years. It was quick. It closed, and we stopped in '73. Turned the war over to the South Vietnamese. So 71, 72. That's right at the end of our active war in Vietnam.
Well, what do you believe was the most significant challenge for you serving in Vietnam?
The first thing that scared me was what was going to be my reaction when I saw my first dead U.S. soldier, and I was really concerned about that. I mean, you can't be flying a helicopter and think about anything but flying a helicopter. So I didn't know what I was going to do. I was afraid of my reaction, so I'd practice and rehearsed. So it turns out I didn't have any real reaction when we picked the first guy up. You've heard me say it before, but the first guy out hit a tripwire and set off a 105 round, and it just shredded him beyond belief. And The company commander was alive, but just barely. And as it went on, the more it went on, the more callous I became about the dead and wounded to a pilot in my company killed. And I said, well, that's too bad. It's better him than me. And that's just common, because by that point we'd all decided we were going to die in this terrible war. Just as long as it didn't hurt too much, I didn't really care. I'd quit writing home. And writing home letters is the only communication you have with anybody. The second, that's why I'm saying the second thing that happened to me is when I made aircraft commander relatively quickly in 60 days, which means now I'm in the left seat and a new guy's in the right seat. And this entire operation, this entire day of whatever I'm going to do, I'm responsible for whatever I do or whatever I don't do. Now it's me. It's just me. But luckily, I'd had so much good training from these warrant officers and other lieutenants that I never turned back from a mission. Never got turned back, no matter what it was that did. But from that point on, when I made aircraft commander, I never failed, and that followed through all of my life and all of my career. Whatever I tried to do, I did it, and it was through this training. That's what it was.
It's all that you can do.
Yep.
How did you or your fellow soldiers cope with the stress of the uncertainty of combat? Were there any ways that you dealt with the stress?
Hang on a minute. During a day of flight is a work day. Hard work day, and it's all day, every day. We don't know what day of the week or month. It's just another day. So once we park that helicopter, then things mentally start to change a little bit. We go back, think about what we did this day and how close we came. We almost hit a tree. In fact, we did hit a tree, and somebody got hurt. One of the pilots got hurt, or crew got hurt. So this plays into how are you going to be when you go home. That's a main worry for a lot of us, is because we forgot home. I forgot what my wife looked like. I forgot what my parents looked like. We didn't write anymore. So here's the way you deal with that. Go to the officers' club at night and drink, and then other pilots did marijuana and heroin and opium. And that's part of the stress you feel about going home. Nobody knows that I just watched 10 guys die today, and so I went to the bar and drank all night. And they got up the next morning and did it all over again. And then these heroin addicts are even worse than that. They're not going to quit heroin until it kills them. Not a lot of pilots did that, but they did smoke a lot of marijuana. But the guys that didn't go out and fly and get in combat, drugs was a huge problem, and the military could not address that. So we came home with post-traumatic stress disorder before anybody knew what that was. In fact, every soldier in every war has suffered with this. It's just called by a different name. So it comes home with you, and you never get through it. And to sit here and talk with you, I'm pushing Vietnam out of my head. This is with me every single day. I learned how to deal with post-traumatic stress disorder, to develop a lifestyle that accommodates post-traumatic stress. A lot of veterans cannot do that, but I was going to defeat it, and I did. So I've been successful in my life and been fortunate too.
Well, thank you
Well,
for doing this.
I'm
Well,
okay.
is there Could you describe the living conditions and the environment you experienced during your deployment?
Oh man. Okay.
It's hot, wet.
The summers are incredibly hot to 115 degrees. It's just so hot that it hurts to breathe the air. Okay. And I'm fortunate that I can get up in the air and cool off a little bit, but I got to come back down. So I live in an old Marine Corps Quonset hut, which is a metal building.
Oh no.
And no insulation in it. So what happened is, before I got to Vietnam, if the 101st Division decided they're going to move, hell, they just pick up and move. You're living in GP medium tents. So by this time in the war, it was pointless for a division to move anywhere than where they are right now, because everything's in it. So we're in old Marine Corps Quonset huts. So when the division moved there, pilots would build a little room. We had every 3 feet in this wall of this building, every 3 feet was a rib. So you get 3 ribs, that's 9 feet. You get 9 feet. So pilots and crew had gone in there and built shanties inside the Quonset hut to live in. And to build that, I'm talking, you got to go down to the dump to pick up wooden rocket boxes with a hammer and save the nails and take the boxes apart, save the nails and straighten them out. And your longest board is just 4 feet long. So when I got to Vietnam, there was no empty room. So my platoon leader kicked open a room over here that had been a storage room. It's full of junk and rats and dirt and dust. And I slept in there for about 2 weeks, just brawling every night. And the water was, if there was water, was pumped in from somewhere, but the Vietnamese chop holes in the pipe to water their rice. So it may go 2 weeks without a shower.
Talk about ripe.
It was awful. And the U.S. military did not issue me not one item of clothing or equipment. I bought it all off the black market. That's where all the equipment with the Vietnamese operated, and the U.S. military supply officers and NCOs got rich off of selling U.S. military supplies and equipment, helmets, gloves, boots, to the black market. So my hooch maid, Vietnamese woman, who comes in and during the day through the MP checkpoint, I'll tell Toy, I need a pair of boots, 9 regular. I'll have them tomorrow for you, so I have to pay her for my boots. Okay, I need a flight suit. Well, I have old ones over here, and I'll get you something. And gloves. Ooh, gloves are expensive, LT. So that's how. That's how I got everything I had. Was from Toy, from the black market. The worst part was being hot and nasty and not having anything to eat. So when I got back at the end of the day, the mess hall was closed, and we lived off sea rations and care packages sent from home. The winter season was worse. The monsoon season is 50 degrees and it rains for 3 months without stopping. It rained 51 inches in 3 weeks. It rained 24 hours a day, all day, every day, for 3 weeks. And we flew in it and lived in it, and that's even worse because you can't. If there's water, it's 50-degree water coming out of a shower head, and it's just all I could take to do that. So it was, the living conditions were pretty horrible. Much better than a guy in the field, but for professional pilots, it wasn't all that great. Yeah, but that we had it probably worse than most because our monsoon season was in the northern part of the country. 75 miles to the south over the mountain range, it was sunshine. It was just our bad luck, but that's it.
when I got back from my basic training back in 2020 and met with my family, the first thing I ate was a hamburger.
Yes. Yes.
And do you remember your first meal you had back when you came
My,
home?
yes, I do. It was actually a chicken fried steak, mashed potatoes, and gravy. My mom was a great cook. And the second thing I remembered, and I've never even said this because I just never remembered, I calculated how I wore that flight suit you saw back here. That's what I wore home.
Oh,
Yes, that's what I can. That's all I had. That's all.
okay.
MPs took everything else. So I calculated coming home, how long would it take for me to get all the Vietnam red dirt off of me, out of me, and I'll be clean again. It's red dirt. If it's summer, it's dust. If it's winter, it's mud. And everybody's turned red. So coming home and getting clean. Taking a hot shower was marvelous. I'm still that way today, by the way.
Yes, sir. Well, were there any moments of heroism that you witnessed during the war?
Every day.
Every day?
That's why I loved being a Huey pilot, and we were not attempting to be courageous in any way. It's just the nature of the job was dangerous to the point that none of us thought we'd ever live to get home. But and I don't know why it is this way. It's not taught in flight school. It's just taught by this old aircraft commander you're sitting with in this Huey. That if these guys on the ground call for us for whatever reason, if it's to get them out of a hot landing zone, to get their dead and wounded, pick up a guy with a broken ankle, deliver them hot chow or mail, bandages, food, medicine, everything comes in the back of a Huey. So if it is our job to go in and do this, that's what we did. And when I worked with the Ranger reconnaissance patrols, we all became legendary. There's six-man patrol in amongst 200,000 North Vietnamese communists. And if I don't get them out, they're not going to come out. If I don't bring them home, they're not going home. So I would be, if picking up a Ranger patrol in contact, it'd take me almost an hour to get out there. Now going out, I would be so scared I couldn't fly. I was trembling so much. I'd let the new guy fly. He didn't have a clue where we were going. But I'm listening on the radio, and I get a vision in my head what's going on. And when I clear the last mountain range and I see the place, I'm totally, completely calm. Everything went crystal clear, beautiful color. Radio traffic was great. I was the calmest, coolest guy in the world, and it all went to slow motion. So somebody shooting at me didn't matter. It never even registered with me. I'd hear a round go through the aircraft, or somebody's hit, da-da-da-da-da. I don't care. I'm going right there to that spot and get those six guys out. And it was nothing for us pilots to do that. We didn't think we were anything special. And we're today, the guys on the ground thought we were. And that's how the legend got started. But this was just a job for us to do. And flying is voluntary. All I had to do is just say, I'm not going to do it anymore. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't do that. But yeah, there in the Rangers, see, the U.S. Army infantry guys, the ground pounders, the grunts, were going home by the time I got there. So I didn't get to witness too much of them. But those recon teams, those guys were incredibly brave. They were just like me, scared to death, but we had a job to do.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
2 more questions.
Okay.
How do you think Vietnam has influenced your views on war and conflict in general?
I saw the Vietnam War get turned over from the U.S. to the South Vietnamese military, and I knew, all of us knew, by working, and I worked with the South Vietnamese Army a lot. I hauled a bunch of them around. They are not warriors like Americans are warriors. They have an Asian mentality. They were raised differently. They even though their country was at war for 150 years straight, they never fought for their country like we do. So I knew when the war was turned over to the South Vietnamese, it was lost, and it was. In 73, the U.S. military was gone. 75, Vietnam collapsed. So um, I, I, I sympathize. I feel sorry for the South Vietnamese civilians, especially the ones that work for the U.S. government. And we can look at the same thing in Afghanistan. Same deal. We pulled out and left them on their own. An X number of them got to America and other places, but they suffered greatly. The civilian population, while I was in that war, suffered horribly. We bombed their country with more bombs than were dropped on Europe in World War II, and to this day. And then we sprayed the country with Agent Orange herbicide, which gave me a brain tumor. But still to this day, children are born with horrible deformities because of that chemical we sprayed in Vietnam. So the war's not over for me, and it won't be ever. And it's not over for the Vietnam civilians. And the civilians that made it to America, I know several, and they're delighted to be here, but they're expatriated from their country. I know they'd love to live in a great country back home, but can't happen. So the Vietnam War never leaves my head. I walk out and look at that wall with 158,000 names on it and think of 158,000 families that are ripped apart, that'll never be the same again. All that could be accomplished by 158,000 people on that wall out there that will never get accomplished. That's the terrible part of that war, and any war, but the Vietnam War for me especially.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Last question.
Okay.
Are there any particular lessons or insights from your time in Vietnam that you'd like to share with the younger generation?
Here's the thing I learned. As I said earlier, I was filled with anxiety when I became an aircraft commander, not knowing, am I really good enough to do this thing? So what I learned is what I think would be important for a person to do in the military and the rest of their life is go do the thing that scares you the worst. Go do the thing that scares you the worst, whether it's public speaking, being a leader, being an advisor, being a combat troop. Go do the thing that scares you the most and do that, and then everything else is a load of gravy. So become an aircraft commander, going to a hot LZ. After I finally accepted how that was going to be, I'd done the scariest things I could do, and since the Vietnam War, I've never been challenged in anything. Not the way I lived my life, not the way that I worked at the prison for 30 years, and been successful in that, and 2 private prisons, home health care, this museum. I've been here for 25 years. And the other thing is, especially combat arms, is plan, rehearse, and plan. But always remember, there's a guy across that fence that's doing the same thing to come and get you. And the other one is, I changed this up a little bit. There was no proverb that said, change favors the prepared mind. And I still live by that, but I changed it to say, chance favors the prepared mind. And that's important, that if you're out on patrol, if you see a chance, you should have already foreseen that coming and be ready for it. Take advantage of it. Develop this. So that's it.
Wow. Thank you for your time, sir.
You're welcome. Enjoyed it.
Was a great experience, and I hope everyone listening would learn something from this.
I hope so. I'll do whatever you guys want to do to help you out. And
Alrighty. Well,
It's something, what we're doing here is something I wanted to do for a long time. And you did a marvelous job with that, by the way.